think we've just been privileged to hear three wonderful, deeply researched and very evocative analyses of different ghetto circumstances. I discussed the Kaunas ghetto as particularly interesting. It's one of the best organized ghetto health services, but maybe not just medical. I met Rabbi Ephraim Oshri,
You did?
yeah, who organized the delousing services. Also a very remarkable survival under the delousing ovens at the end of the ghetto. The delousing services were organized by Rabbi Ephraim Oshri, and very efficiently, I think, in the ghetto. He also considered the overall ethical situation, writing very important and fundamental responsa about the ethical circumstances. So I think it's, we can see a very constructive collaboration between different groups within the ghetto. You spoke about the airfield, but I think that Rabbi Oshri is worthwhile bringing into the story because I think he made an important contribution, which also opens up the issue of rabbis within all the ghetto health services. It's not just a medical situation, it's also something that goes beyond that, where religious leaders also have an important educational, guiding and constructive role to play in the awful circumstances of the ghetto. I would like to throw things open for discussion now.
Just a quick question, actually, to the Neudorfer paper, in that you have a paper presented at the time. Was there any mention in the paper of what medicine was available and what quantity of that medicine and how it was dispersed, how it was supplied, or was there no medicine whatsoever?
There was, I'll try to talk louder if you can hear me, if not I'll go to the microphone. There was a pharmacy at the ghetto, and they managed to smuggle the Nazis only allowed them 15 types of medications that the Nazi government, the German authorities provided to the pharmacy, but they had an extensive network of smuggling medicine into the ghetto. At some stage, you see the German rulers complaining that those Jews have more medicine than the German army themselves. But it was not mentioned in the lecture.
Okay. So we go next in...
Yeah, a question to Dr. Orit Neudorfer, concerning the gynecological complications. The stress-induced amenorrhea is a well-known phenomenon, reversible. But myomas of the uterus, that's a really unknown.
I'm not sure that the myomas were more frequent than the usual, but they were visible because the women were so thin and the myomas grew so big that they could be through the abdomen wall, which usually you don't know about them until you you make an ultrasound, or they are so big that. So I don't think it was just an observation, but I can't see any reason why it would be more frequent.
It is mentioned in this paper that amenorrhea was almost universal at the beginning, but then after the Jews, there was no hunger in this ghetto. After a short period, they managed to smuggle food in such quantities that nobody died of hunger. So after a short period, the amenorrhea declined rapidly and women got their periods back.
Right, there, and then we're going round.
It's not a question, it's a small remark.
Okay.
Thank you for your enlightening lectures. I would also want to highlight that related to the first lecture about physicians and partisans, the vast majority of the physicians of Marshal Tito were Jewish physicians, and especially I want to remember to highlight the role of Dr. Rosa Papo. Dr. Rosa Papo was a Bosnian Jewish physician, which she reached the highest level, the degree of general in the army of Yugoslavia, and the vast majority of the physicians of the partisan corps of Tito were Jews. And after Yugoslavia was established like a nation, a lot of them were taking key positions in the health system in Yugoslavia in the first time of the country.
Okay. I missed Turkila out, and then we'll continue going round.
Okay. I was wondering, and this is about the Vilna Ghetto, the Kovno Ghetto. I was wondering about the German doctors who were the overseers of everything that was going on in the medical field in the ghetto. Have you any evidence as to how they perceived the activities that the Jewish doctors were doing in the ghetto? Did they even use the results, and what kind of use in the system, or even for personal merits?
As far as I know, they did not intervene at all at this medical treatment, with two exceptions. The head of the Jewish Council was a very renowned internal medicine, the chief of the Eltesenrat, Dr. Elchanan Elkes. He was chosen in part because he was the personal physician of the German ambassador to Lithuania. And we know that although the law they were secretly, he was treating German personnel from the occupied territory throughout the period of the ghetto. And another, that was one very well-respected, another Jewish doctor who was allowed to continue his practice outside the ghetto and treated Germans and Lithuanians until the SS, the Gestapo ordered him back in the ghetto, and then they murdered him. So. But they did not intervene at all with this medical effort.
But since it is mentioned that they were giving codes or masking some of the facts in their reports, shows that they took into account that at some point Nazis could have access to those lists, and they gave them the ability to work the clinic as they decided, as long as the workforce was available. But if there weren't enough workers, then maybe they would go into the list and find out how many sick days were granted and why. So they had to get ready for this possibility all the time.
By the way, there are hundreds of documents about the medicine in the ghetto, and if you have any research students to go into something that has totally not been researched, and I go into it superficially because I write about the whole internal, so if you have any students, I can point them to those hundreds of documents.
So, the next question, you? Yeah? No? Okay. Go on.
But I'm a latecomer, so we should go to you first. Olga. So I have a question for Olga specifically, and this is coming out of ignorance. But my sense of the camps in Transnistria is that there is a lot of tension between Romanian Jews and Ukrainian Jews, and a sense of sort of cultural differences, linguistic differences and such. So I wonder if in the case of Ratniarka there is anything of this, or because what you paint is a rather uniform kind of struggle with ideological underpinnings between communism and Jewish traditions of self-care. So, so if you could comment on this aspect.
So Wapniarka did not, it was not a ghetto. It was literally a concentration camp,
Right.
and as I mentioned, it was the only one, actually officially 2 concentration camps in all of Transnistria. The other ones were ghettos. Most of them were open ghettos. They were not with barbed wire, they were not closed ghettos. So in a lot of the Transnistrian ghettos, there was indeed contact with the local population who had not been massacred yet. So initially, the first wave with Operation Barbarossa, the Romanian and the Nazis pretty much killed, massacred the local Jewish population. But when the deportations of the Romanian and the Jews, the Romanian Jews and the Jews from the occupied areas, Bukovina and Bessarabia, were taken to Transnistria, then of course there became a kind of competition for resources between the deported Romanian Jews and the local populations. However, there was also a lot of collaboration. So the Romanian deported Jews, for example, relied on the local Ukrainian and Russian population, Jewish populations, for linguistic needs, and also accommodation. So the deported Romanian Jews were looking for accommodation within the ghettos, and they appealed to the local population for that. And the Ukrainian and Russian-speaking Jews from those areas needed the Romanians to deal with the authorities.
With the Romanians.
Yeah, with the occupational Romanian authorities. So there was a lot of synergy and a lot of codependence. And of course, there was also, I mean, if you read, for example, the journals of various Judenrat from these ghettos, Romanians, you see that unfortunately they were willing to sacrifice the Ukrainian Jews first for all of the labor, for all of the really horrible things that led to their extermination and death and deportation over the Bug River, which was in the German-occupied areas, for example. So that was also part of the...
But that doesn't happen in Wapniarka.
Wapniarka is a particular case that has no such population. It was Romanian Jews, but also, of course, from Bukovina and some Bessarabia, as I mentioned in a little bit of, yeah.
Okay, so we can continue. We got one more there? No? No? Okay. No, right. So we're on this bench here. It's just Miriam?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, Miriam.
First, it was a fascinating lectures, really. This is the second... This is the second session, and I really am satisfied to hear all the material you deal with. It's very important. But I want to share with the audience that we were lucky to have the son of Dr. Arthur Kassler in our Nahariya conference, and he gave a lecture with the fascinating material of his father. It's amazing. He wrote his memoirs with graphic and painting the situation and the health situation that he did. He himself came to understand the reason and the connection between the food and the health situation was very unique in these camps. And Paul can correct me, but if I understand from him, the case of these camps was also involved and used in the Nuremberg trials, because the people, they could show what happened to these survivors. So this is very interesting, and I think in the material is very different. And you can use it to deepen your fascinating
yeah,
results.
No, I'm very
I want to make a
familiar,
connection
yeah.
between you and David Kessler.
Oh no, I know him very well,
You know
and
him?
I have his journal. I have all of the documents.
It's fascinating.
Yes, it's absolutely. And what's also wonderfully, it's absolutely a wonderful story that Dr. Kessler was involved in the compensation schemes of all of the survivors after the war. And he was a wonderful, generous doctor who supported all of their claims and who really tried to help them get something from the German.
So this is first, and I want to ask Rami and Orit. We have a little correspondence about some issue, and I want to bring it here on the table. That there is one physician in the Kovna ghetto that he wrote in his memories after the Holocaust that he saw that chronic illness stopped. And he gave his explanation that this was because people want to be strong and understood that they have to go to war to save themselves. And he think this influenced the very dramatic situation that illnesses stop. So Eliyahu Segal, yes.
Wojcicki also writes this.
Also Wojcicki, and we had a little bit disagreement about it, but I think it's very important to understand about the connection between soul and body. And we can learn about it a lot from this extreme situation, even though it's no one-on-one, yes, but it's very important to learn also these insights that physicians can't and bring us, and I think it's relevant also for health and medicine today. It's very important.
It's very important. The topic of our lecture today was different to maybe the next conference.
Yes.
Anyway, it happened that I finished the chapter in my PhD about the health services, and I asked Orit what she thinks about those observations. So if you remember what you answered me.
Yeah, I said that in a lot of diseases, it is well known also today that keeping the patient within work and life cycles that make him go out of bed in the morning and functioning improves his health. And with many chronic diseases today, we have that tendency to encourage the patients to make the effort and take jobs, go to school, etc. And particularly in diseases like multiple sclerosis, for example, which are autoimmune in nature, and they have the remissions and exacerbations. We know that exacerbations can be influenced by stress, by mood. So having to go out of bed and working and functioning really helps you to keep yourself healthy.
I didn't like, just one more sentence, I didn't like the way Sarah describes it. He writes the following: people who before the war were spending all the time examining the sugar level and getting blood tests every day, now they're working 12 hours. They're working 12 hours to save their lives, and I think it would be better for them to check their blood pressure, but they couldn't.
Right, we've got one quick observation and then we'll finish.
I would like to actually follow up with two questions, quick questions. For Naomi, I'm wondering, just curious, why you chose Volkovist with your research on Mileikowski before, and what we really in a way need is kind of a map of all these lesser known, in the Polish context, so much has been done on Warsaw and Łódź and Kraków, but smaller places, especially in the so-called borderlands, a lot less. So is this a very different picture than, say, in Warsaw? And I wanted to ask about Kovna, whether there are also observations about psychology, about emotional state, about taking care of
the paper that Miriam mentioned talks about it a little bit.
Okay, Shiva.
Okay.
It's not a paper, it's a testimony.
Yeah.
Well, I came to work about the Volkovist by mistake, really. It was a coincidence. I was looking for physicians in Bialystok and stories about Bialystok, and I happened to come to info about Yaakov Makov. My husband's family is a Makov family. So I started researching, and somehow I came to learn about Volkovysk and the murder in Volkovysk, and I wonder what happened there. And so that's how I came to Volkovysk. And I think after researching Warsaw, Miriam and I, and after the big research about Milikowski, it's a time, and we talked a lot about it, it's a time that we'll start researching and writing biographies about physicians in the small towns in the area. And that's our mission now. Yeah, so
One of our missions.
One of our missions, right.
Okay, so I'd like to thank our 4 speakers for really excellent presentations, very, very different types of topics. Thank you.